This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni. Somehow I think it's going to be funny.
This is going to be a fun episode because we had a breakthrough watershed event yesterday, which is 172 episodes into the podcast and 4+ years of knowing each other. We finally met face to face, and it's not like we live that far apart. It was about an hour and a half for me to get from my house to your house. Mm-hmm. And another 10 minutes to get from your house to where you had gone to hide. But it was wonderful to meet you and just to have casual time that didn't require, waiting for somebody to finish talking so you can say something like you have to when you're in a Zoom meeting or online. Much more nice. Casual. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was nice. Thanks for having me there. And I, of course, went down to Absecon, New Jersey to do a wedding. I was the officiant at a wedding yesterday. And you thought the wedding was before we were getting together, and the wedding was actually after we were getting together. So I'm going to let you tell the story about what you thought and what happened and the way you were overthinking it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think this qualifies as a control freak moment or experience. Okay. So you said you were coming down, and I thought, oh, this is great. When you said wedding, I thought 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Or between 11 and 1. That's when people normally, do their weddings. And you suggested that we might meet. And I thought, okay, that'll be great. I'll meet him. And I'm thinking after the wedding. So he'll be at, wherever it was.
The historic Smithville Inn.
Yeah, Smithville.
That's where I was going.
As a matter of fact, I was there a couple of days prior, and they have all these new bed and breakfasts there that they didn't have before. And I thought, oh, he'll probably be staying at one of these because it's tons. I wrote the whole story.
You made a whole story up there, yeah.
I did, and my husband was all in it too because he was with me, and he said, "Well, I wonder which one." Which one he's going to be in. And
which B&B I'm staying in, yeah.
I don't know, but this is great. I had the whole thing in my mind. And I thought, well, after the wedding, he's going to be maybe drained. I didn't know what responsibilities you had. Did you have to go with them and take pictures, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, so, what I'll do, I won't have him come to pick me up at my house because normally I don't have access to a car until late on Sunday. And husband said, no, I'm coming home. I'm not doing that. I said, okay, I'll meet you at Starbucks. So that way you could just come straight and you just don't have to go through all of this. And it didn't work out that way because we were in Starbucks and I don't know if you looked at your watch I'm sensitive to, movements and stuff. And I said, he's getting antsy about time. And I thought, well, the wedding's over. Although when you came in and you had a baseball cap on and you didn't look ready for an official ceremony, I said, right. Well, he's not coming from it. He said you were going to it. Oh, man. Yeah. Control freak again without all the information.
Well, and there's such wonderful metaphysical lessons there because you constructed an entire story which included my accommodations in historic Smithville and included a new time schedule that had nothing to do with the actual time schedule that I was planning on. And the part that got glossed over is that on Sunday mornings, I do the Sunday celebration for New Thought Philadelphia. I did that from home. And, we ended about 11:45, and then I, posted the videos, had myself some lunch, got in the car, and drove down to Carol's house because it was a 4:30 wedding. And I had to be in historic Smithville, which is about 10 minutes from your house, for 3:30. So my story was completely different than your story.
Yeah.
And I am completely unattached because, I got the text from you that you were going to be at the Starbucks, which updated me on you didn't have a car, which is why I was coming to your house. So, and it's like, okay.
I'm always trying to make sure everything is okay. Because I get lost a lot. I don't know how I made it. Yeah, I do. Before the GPS, it was just horrible. So I always get lost a lot. And I knew you were coming to a new area. And I thought the least amount of travel would be good because I don't want to be down here getting lost. He'll be tired. He's got to go home after all that. I'm just
and we wound up getting together, and it wound up being just fine.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. And actually, what I'm going to ask you to do during the break is to put the headphones back on, and we'll turn off the echo cancellation because we're getting a little thing in the audio, and just to make sure that people can hear what's going on, because there is not a scintillating moment that we want to miss in any of this.
Okay.
And we'll continue in a moment.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione, having a ball.
We're talking about the metaphysics of a Starbucks visit. And, and the things that we learn about ourselves by doing our best to make things as easy as possible for everybody involved. And sometimes, as Carol pointed it out, getting wrapped around the axle and solving problems that don't exist and accommodating and adjusting for things that aren't there. And isn't that the story of life? We can fix things that aren't broken. We can figure stuff out that's going to work just fine or not, regardless of our level of involvement. And, we get to, we do what we're doing. And you're talking about, it's bringing out your control freak tendencies. And it's reminding me that I just started on a year-long leadership program about self-compassion. And one of the books that we're studying is Letting Go. Same thing for me. It's like, all right, I can, and in the introduction, which is the part that I've read about in the book, it's David Hawkins, and goes through an entire list of all of the things that people do, from Ayurveda to yoga classes to the crystals to all. I mean, it's like a page and a half of all the things that we can do to fix ourselves. And it gets to be comical partway through. It's like, okay, yeah, it might change something. It might heal something. It might fix something, but it might just be a coincidence that we have a healing while we're doing that stuff. It might be the tapping or it might be something else.
How do we know? Right? So Yeah, I thought about it when I got in the car, and I thought, what just happened here? And I said, why did you do that? Why did you get concerned? First of all, this is a grown man. He's 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 not a kid. I think I was relating to doing a wedding, and through the 30 years of doing weddings here and there,
Yep.
you want to make sure everything and everybody and everything is in place. And I'm thinking he's coming from that experience. I don't want meeting me in a town that he's not familiar with to become another problem.
Well, I thank you for that, and unnecessary, because it turns out that when I did go to the wedding at the historic Smithville Inn attached to the historic Smithville Village or whatever it is, which is all the cute little shoppies, all the PPE, they were having some kind of a Halloween festival there. And there were hundreds of women in witches' hats pushing little goblins in their strollers, including a couple of guys who were standing there preaching the gospel about how we should not be fallen for Satan and this, this pagans. It was great. It was great. And I couldn't get into the parking lot, and I had to park across the street, and I had to make my way in through the back way. And I got there and I said, where's the wedding? They said, oh, just wait here. I said, I'm the officiant. And they said, oh, well, in that case, go back out the front door, down the sidewalk, around the side of the building, down, and they're in the back. It's like, oh, okay. So I had been pre-releasing and detaching from all of that stuff, because if I were the sort of person who is like pompous and attached to, people being ready for me with the red carpet rolled out, I would have been sorely disappointed. And for me, it was a typical wedding. First of all, it was charming and lovely, and I had a lot of fun with it. And the couple did some things that we don't usually do. They did a hand fasting, which is the Celtic tradition of tying their hands together with a cord, very lovely cord that they imported from Ireland. And then it's draped in such a way that when they take their hands out, basically that ties the knot. And that's where the term came from. Okay. And I'd not done one of these ceremonies before, and they had the cord, and I figured out what the ceremony was. And I said, you guys know how to tie the knot? And they gave me this blank look. It's like, all right, we'll make it up. And we did. And they actually were legally married before the ceremony. So there was really nothing to worry about. I was just there to have fun, put on a little show for their friends, and kick and tee up the cocktail hour. And it was just fine.
It's always nice when things are stress-free like that, but sometimes I can't remember how many times that I've had those stress-free things. The wedding was always tense, who's going to sit where, and I'm thinking, didn't y'all work this all out ahead of time?
No. I give the brides who I work with as much support as they need in dealing with stress, because every once in a while there's a mother of the bride or a mother-in-law or somebody in the bridal party, or somebody who's got an attitude, as we say in Philadelphia, an attitude about what's going on. It needs to be a particular way, and it's got to go like this, and it's got to go like that. And I found in the 4 or 5 years that I've been doing this, that I wound up with brides who don't get a lot of stress. And I'm not sure if that's because I'm prepared for it and I just got no energy in it. Or maybe because, that just never, those are the ones where it's never going to come up. And my favorite one is, his family is very religious and they have an attitude about this new thought, pagan, heathen, quasi imposter man of God doing the ceremony. And I have such a foolproof technique for helping them get through that it's just it's almost no fun. Oh, find the person who's going to complain the loudest and ask if they would read a brief piece of scripture.
Does that work?
Every time.
Oh, okay.
Every time.
I never thought about that.
There was one where the bride had the pastor friend of the family, all fire and brimstone. And I said, he's welcome to do the invocation for us. And he and Jesus got up on the soapbox, and
I was going to say,
it went longer than I invited him to go, but
oh my gosh, yes,
as soon as he was finished, that was the end of that. And then I could start the program.
You got heart. Let me tell you, you got heart. I had first of all, there were a couple of times that some of the family wanted to know if the wedding would be actually legitimate and legal, since a woman pastor who wasn't supposed to be a pastor anyway, is this all going to be legal? And I thought, here's a good time to just share that it's legal if you went to City Hall in Philadelphia, So if you didn't go there, I don't care who's performing this wedding, it's not legal. And then they would say she had a smart mouth. So, it's what can I tell you? Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to I think it was the photographer before they would get it in the lineup, and somebody in the wedding party said, "So, what's the biggest the oopsie that you ever had in a wedding?" And she said, "Well, when the officiant didn't show up." Apparently, that happens every once in a while. And the person says, "Well, why?" And she says, "Without the officiant, there's no wedding." You need an officiant for it. We can have the whole rest of the party. We can take all the pictures, but unless there's an officiant to say, "I now pronounce you," it's not a thing.
That's right. That's
and
right.
I thought, wow, I'm glad I don't feel pressure. But I'm also glad that I was in the neighborhood an hour and a half early.
I have even had that experience. The officiant showed up late. Can you do it? Can you do it? Can you step in and do it? Said, okay, let's just calm down here. So, yeah, weddings are yeah, they're all a story.
Yep, high stress, low impact. I used to be in the wedding DJ business, and my partner continued the business after I moved out of town. And he got seasoned and wizened and became either a sage or a crotchety old guy. And he had his own techniques for making the reception go properly. Like, make sure you don't let somebody request the song, which was the first dance of the now divorced mother and father of the bride. And he knew how to check for that sort of thing. And his pragmatic approach was, you know what? On Sunday morning, I'm going to wake up married. So mission accomplished.
That's it.
We're just going to have some fun along the way.
That's it.
So that, yeah. And so thank you for your concern about me and my welfare and my well-being, even if it showed up as your control freak card getting renewed inadvertently.
I was just thinking, I thought you put that away, but I have, this is what I've accepted. I think that some things you live with your whole life, and you just have to you have to control it or address it as it comes up. So I take me wherever I go, and I have to make sure that certain things aren't triggered. I mean, it's not all bad. I didn't feel bad about it necessarily because all of it was well-intentioned. But I thought you could have saved yourself a little trouble if you realized this is a grown man. You're the one that gets lost out here. Nobody else gets lost but you. So calm yourself down, honey.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to share a personal observation. It's an observation about myself that has been very helpful, that might be helpful to other people who are listening, which is that I very much, my background is being a smartass, to the point where I was actually a professional smartass on the radio. We would do a morning show and somebody would say something and I would come up with a really clever rejoinder. A lot of times hurtful, but always funny. And say it. And what I realized is that I can put a little tiny bit of a delay between me noticing that there's something funny to be said and saying it. And so all of my smartass tendencies still exist. They are still all in place. And when something happens, I have that smartass observation. The wisdom and the maturity comes from that brief pause between when I think of it and when I say it. And a lot of times now, I don't say it. I just smile to myself and allow the conversation to move on. Because it would have been funny, but it won't be helpful.
I call those God pauses, because it's you have the funny thing that you say, and I blame everything on coming from West Philadelphia.
Might as well.
I love Philadelphia and the people that are the personalities that are produced in West Philadelphia. I really do, but I could say some words that aren't nice sometimes, 4-letter words. And it's at I'll just say back at a certain point in time when I was growing up, it was a way of life. You had to be able to handle yourself, try to avoid the fight. And if you could do it with your language, that's good. If not, you had to go to the next level.
Right.
So I had to learn how to not respond that way. When people say something that aggravates me and whatever, I learned from a bishop who is no longer with us. She said, I could curse you out and make you feel good about it, or something like that. She said.
Love it.
And, I had her on this really high pedestal because I just thought she was everything. And she wasn't talking to me. She just was saying. And I thought, wow, I can't even imagine. But then she talked about God and, who she wanted. And I said, yeah, that's what I'll do. So you're calling it a pause, right? That's what it is. It's like, because if I say to you what I want to say or what would naturally come up, now I got to start all over again. I've knocked myself down. I got to start all over and come back to where the level of maturity and spirituality that I want to be. I don't think you're worth it. So I think I'm just going to pass on this cussing out that you really deserve. But I'm just going to pass on it.
Yeah. The pithy way that I like to describe it is, and that pause, sometimes it's just for a millisecond in my own head. When I hear the joke and I say, I'm not going to repeat that out loud where anybody else can hear it. It'll just have to be funny and inappropriate for me. And there are other times where it lands and I sit there and I wait and I pause. And the conversation around me stops if people are paying attention or waiting for me to say something. And I'll just pause for a moment. And I've noticed that when I take time to not say something in the middle of a conversation, I go from being a wise ass to being a wise man. That's the most amazing thing. Wait a second. I just increased my esteem with you by not saying anything and doing it for several seconds. Interesting.
Well, yeah. One thing is that people have a perception of who you are and what they expect from you. Also, it's Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 Agreements. I'm surprised at how often I reflect on domestication. We are, I call it programmed or, acculturated or whatever to respond in a certain way. And I know it's cultural in different places and different locations, but people expect a certain thing. And when you're not, or you don't, it's like you get elevated a little bit. And I'm like hung up on me, right? I'm hung up on what I think of me. So I don't know. I don't know what somebody else is thinking.
On other people.
No, I'm trying to be I'm trying to be at a certain level, which I probably don't have to try. I understand all that, but those are the only words that I have. And when I like it when I hit the mark or when I do what I want to do, rather than what I really feel like doing or saying. Maybe, yeah. And I give myself a smile for that. That's it.
So,
But
so
I
many
don't think,
life lessons. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I don't think you can take it for granted because there are buttons still there that can be pushed, I think. I don't think the
Yeah.
buttons go dead.
Yeah. I mean, the four agreements, I find myself talking about the four agreements a lot. It is such a very simple premise and an easy to read book and so powerful. And I probably read it for the first time 25, 30 years ago. And I'm still not completely able to live it. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And the second one is don't take anything personally. Really? Nothing? Take nothing personally? Hey. And then the third one is don't make assumptions. And the fun part is when all of those start, somebody says something and they're not being impeccable with their word, and I make an assumption about what it was that they meant, and I take it personally, then I'm going to say something, I'm not impeccable with my word, and then they're going to make an assumption, and the game on. And if I can do that myself, then I can live in a way that's peaceful. And if I can do that with other people who are doing the same thing, then we can all support each other in that peacefulness.
But I wish we could talk about, I guess we could talk about that at some point, the four agreements, because it's not so much a new way of, I guess it is a new way of life, but it's a thoughtfulness, where you're kind of checking, am I being impeccable? Am I being offended by this? Is this what the person meant, or did I just take it that way? And if they did mean it in a negative way, it's like, so what? Okay.
Right.
So it's a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a magical phrase that you can use to overcome that, making assumptions, which is, what did you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you'd like, I can tell you what I thought I heard, but I might not have heard right. So can you say more about that? What did you actually mean when you made that comment that sounded like you were talking about my mama? I mean, maybe you were talking about something different, and we don't have to have a fight.
That one I have to practice. And I'll tell you why I have to practice it, because my mom used to get mad at me when I said this, but I really don't care. Like, I don't ask you what you meant by it, because if you meant it to be mean, I don't care. It's like I'm on to something else anyway. So fine. And it's not to say that I can't be insulted, but it's a little difficult. I mean, why would you take time to insult me? I just,
and
going
that's,
with life.
that's part of that clarity, is to understand when somebody's insulting me, that it's probably says more about them than it says about me.
Exactly. So, I mean, I don't want to spend that time anymore,
Yeah.
And I think I always have been that way, in the sense that I had 3 children and I was a pastor. I didn't have a lot of time to, you know what I mean? I didn't have a lot of time to worry about my feelings being hurt and then figuring out how to get it back together. Just move the heck on. And
right.
Yeah.
I can spend the next hour and a half being offended or not. I can say, oh, that really wasn't very polite, and move on. And at the very least, I get another hour and a half of my life.
Exactly. And I mean, when you're a female pastor, not in New Thought. Well, in New Thought, you're not called pastors, right? It's spiritual directors.
Spiritual directors. There's some who call themselves pastors. There are some who are spiritual leaders or senior ministers. It runs the gamut. It means pastor.
So on the other side, pastor belongs to, not so much anymore, but at one point it was like a male territory, and the offenses and all of that were just always there, just hurling. You just knew it was going to happen. And I just I couldn't do my job worrying about it, So I couldn't go to a church with a woman pastor. Fine. Go to the one down the street. Why are you telling me? I don't care.
That's right.
Life was okay with me.
if that is in fact the truth, that you can't go to a church with a women pastor, this is the last conversation we're going to have anyway. So bye.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see, there's a little heartburn in the churches where the pastor is assigned. The bishop sends you there, and the people are all upset because they don't want a female. And I remember one time I was in that situation, and I was listening to all of this, and they said, "Well, we don't want a woman pastor." I said, "Well, talk to the bishop." And then after all of that was settled, long story, all that was settled, I don't think I can stay here. Okay, that is your choice. I mean, what am I, I never knew what I was supposed to do with that. And I one time I did get a little ugly. I said, tomorrow when I wake up, I will not have and I named the male anatomy. So I promise you, when I come back next week, I will not have that. So you have like a week to decide what you're going to do.
Yeah, well, we're not putting energy into it. It changes the whole formula, the whole equation there. Let's take a break. And when we continue, we're going to do a prayer on being our authentic selves.
Ooh.
It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at bethelight.com. That's b-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at bethelight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni. It's been great.
This is a wonderful conversation. Yeah. And sort of circling around the ideas of non-attachment and acceptance and letting go of control and being present to what's possible and not making assumptions and not taking things personally and. And kind of, for me, in the center of all of that is being our authentic self. And you were talking about that when somebody came to you as their female pastor and said, I don't think I can go to a church with a female pastor. It's like, well, I'm here, so what's your move? Rather than being attached, oh, I'm not worthy, I shouldn't be here. It's like, there's a reason I'm here. There's a reason you're here. Well, I guess we get to work it out.
Yeah. I don't know that the other side of the conversation, the person that's hurling the insult or the resistance or whatever, is really thinking about themselves as having choice and making a decision. And I don't know that they're really thinking it through. Because if you think things through, a lot of times you won't say it.
Well, yeah. I mean, when somebody says that to their female pastor, what do they think is going to happen next? It's not like you're going to suddenly immolate and disintegrate, and the earth is going to open up and swallow you, and then they're going to start over again. Something happens right after that. It's like, okay, if we're compassionate with the person who's saying that, it's like, well, you're in a tough situation because there's something that you want that you don't have, and you need to work through how to take care of yourself. Because, by the way, I can't change this for you. I'm not quitting my job. Somebody else sent me here. The rest of these people here want me. So I'm not going to disadvantage them just because you have an attitude. So, what's the next step?
Yeah. And I guess there's a conversation down the road, why did you feel the need to tell me this? I mean, why? What do you think I'm supposed to do? It bounces back it bounces back on you anyway. You have to make a decision about what you're going to do from this moment forward.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, if we can ask that question, somebody can come at us with something that's that unreasonable and say, oh, that's interesting. If this worked perfectly from this point on, what would happen for you?
You're way too gracious. Like, I don't care.
Right. And, and I would say that looking at somebody like, there's an uncomfortable situation that you're in, and you think that it involves me, but it doesn't. It just involved you. So let me be present for you as you as you work through your issue, or don't. Because like you say, something's going to happen, and it probably won't involve you taking yourself out of the equation. Let's do a prayer. And the prayer here kind of it's we've been talking about metaphysics at Starbucks, and this is going to be the sort of a metaphysical approach to all of these things, is being our authentic self, bringing ourselves 100% to the circumstance and the situation. And that implies all of the four agreements about not making assumptions, being impeccable with our words, saying what it is that we truly mean, and having clarity with that, not taking things personally, and doing the best that we can. And there's other things that are involved in being our authentic self. But when I'm being the truth of who and what I am, when I'm speaking something that is absolutely core and something that I would repeat and something that I don't feel comfortable in changing, when I'm speaking from that place of authenticity, this is okay with me, this is who I am, this is what I'm asking for, this is what I need, this is what I've refused to accept, and I'm okay with other people who are not in agreement with that, it just means that we're going to engage in a different way than perhaps somebody else had in mind. When we allow that bright light of divine love to shine through us in a way that is authentic and lets the truth of who we are through, not what our ego says we are, not what our ego says we want to be, not what we've figured out the rest of the world wants to hear, but to be true to ourselves, to be our authentic selves. That is a level of sharing and openness and invitation that transcends all the other stuff. So let's do the prayer about that. Let's turn our attention away from the details in the world around us. We can describe everything that's going on for us, and that's generally our ego putting labels on our experience. And behind and beneath and within all of that, there is love. There is that infinite love, that divine power and presence, that one love that shares itself as all of its creation. It's God, it's nature, it's spirit, it's the Big Bang, it's whatever it is we call it. There's that one creative power that has created everything. It creates the galaxies, the planets, the people, the particles, all of it. Everything is that one infinite love expressing in a particular and specific and personal way. Everything is that divine light of God's love shining in its own way. And that everything includes me and each one within the sound of my voice. So as we turn to that truth of who and what we are, as we allow the judgment and the perspective and the attachment and the ego and the agenda to fall away, and allow that bright light of divine love that's the truth of what we are to shine through, we are able to reveal our authentic selves even more richly and more fully. And sometimes things are true because we say they're true. But more often, things are true because that's the way the world works, and we are simply acknowledging that truth. So as we are letting go of attachment, as we are opening up to new possibilities, as we are opening up to sharing ourselves more deeply and more openly and more fully, the universe responds, and the people who surround us and come in contact with us are doing the same thing. That's the law of attraction, bringing more of that like-minded, authentic energy into our experience. It becomes an amplifier. So we get to live even more fully our authentic self, and get to engage with other people who are doing the same thing. And away falls the pretense and the opinion and the unnecessary ego-based opinions as that love unfolds, as that light shines, as that good reveals itself. And so that's what I'm claiming for each of us, to the greatest degree possible, knowing that it doesn't happen instantaneously. It's not an on-off switch that we just finally found and turned on. It's a tendency, an inclination, an orientation, an opening to allow that bright light of love that's the truth of what we are to reveal itself even more fully. So that's what I'm claiming, in our own way for each one of us. That same process unfolding for all of us. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good. I'm grateful for the willingness of each one to engage in that process. I'm grateful for the way that that divine light is shining even more brightly through each of us. And I'm grateful for the awareness of this creative process that allows me to speak this word and release it into that creative law that creates everything. And to know with absolute certainty it is now creating this goodness for and through and as us. So I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.